What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Trucker 219. I'm going to re-kick up this Trucker Tales, and we're going to start doing a couple of stories, and I'm going to call it Stories from States. So basically, I'm going to tell you guys a story that has happened in whatever state I'm talking about during my trucking career. And I can't think of a better spot to start than the state that I grew up in of Indiana. Obviously, I can't take you back to the scenario in which I was in and whatever story I'm telling, so I'm going to utilize a little bit of AI for some help. And I am looking at some of these images right now. And I'm quickly learning that AI isn't quite to its full potential yet. So I hope you guys get a kick out of some of the images it's come up with. I will include the prompt that I used to create these animations in the bottom of each animation, so you know where my mind was at when I was creating these, because they didn't quite turn out exactly what I anticipated them to turn out. So being that I can't take you back and record exactly what happened when it did, I hope you guys are all right with me using a little bit of AI to help me out with this story. I've always been fascinated with AI from the invention of Siri, being able to ask Siri a question. It's always been fascinating to me. And there's a lot of channels out there that'll pass off stuff and try to make it seem like it's not AI. But I want you guys to be well aware that the images and animations created in this video were created by AI software. So without further ado, let's get into stories from states, starting with my hometown and home state, Indiana. And what better place to start than when I got my first start in the trucking career? So growing up in a small town of LaPorte, Indiana, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with my life. There was a big steel mill near us to where we could go and work there, a few other odd factory jobs, and your typical retail store. So I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, and I decided to follow in the footsteps of my dad, who was a Class B CDL driver. I figured if he could support a family off of a CDL trucking, then I could as well. But in typical punk little kid fashion, I thought it was a good idea to one-up my dad and go for the CDL-A. He had a Class B CDL. So in my mind at that time, I was going to one-up my dad by getting the bigger license and driving the bigger truck down the road. So I went to school and I studied real hard at the TDI South Bend there in South Bend, Indiana. So I finished CDL school and I passed my test and everything I needed to do to get my CDL, and actually got my CDL. Woohoo, go me! During my time at the CDL school, we were required to start filling out applications for jobs, and I ended up landing my first CDL job ever. And I was off to the races. I got an email with the itinerary of what was to be in my schedule for the upcoming few days. And this included a bus pass and a bus schedule to get down to Kentucky from Indiana to do my training at the major carrier that I started out with. And let me just tell you guys, I was absolutely terrified to leave my hometown. Not to say that I hadn't been outside of my hometown, but I hadn't traveled much. And since having a wife and a kid at the time, I hadn't left my family ever. I was working, factory jobs and things like that to make ends meet, and I was pretty content with that. I just knew I needed to make some more money in order to provide a good life for my family. So nevertheless, I headed to a local town where the bus was scheduled to pick up. As I was at the bus stop getting ready to get on the bus, giving my wife a kiss and a hug to the newborn baby that I had that had only just turned 1 at the time, I was leaving my hometown to create a new life for my family. I grabbed what few bags I had and packed them up into the bus and started heading down to Indianapolis, Indiana. I looked out the window one last time as the bus drove away and seen my wife and my baby, my baby standing as babies do, waving goodbye. So, despite how funny this is, I was absolutely terrified. I had no idea what I was going to do next. I didn't have a full list of every stop that I was going to make. It wasn't until I got on the bus that I actually got my next bit of information of where I was going and the times of the bus stops. So I had left that first bus stop at 5 o'clock, heading to Indianapolis, Indiana. It was scheduled to arrive at 8 o'clock. And I looked on my itinerary for the bus schedule, and it showed that my next bus was going to be departing Indianapolis, headed for Kentucky at 9 o'clock. So I figured, okay, I'll have to sit there for an hour and a half, 2 hours. Not a big deal. I'll rest up, get a little bit of sleep, consider my life choices up to this point, look forward to what's coming, I'm already starting to miss my family at that point. I'm extraordinarily terrified of what's to come, but I'm excited at the same time. So I go up to the counter at the bus stop and I ask them, okay, so when is this next bus supposed to be here? I see this time on my schedule. And they tell me, oh, you misread that. You thought it was supposed to take off at 9 o'clock tonight. It's not supposed to take off till 9 o'clock the next morning. Womp womp. So before we carry on with the story, I wanted to let you know that I started memberships on my channel. What is a membership? Well, if you become a member of Trucker 219 and join the 219 Convoy crew, this enables you to have priority reply to comments, members only chat rooms, and a member shout out in one of my next videos. It also gives you personalized loyalty badges and emojis that you can use that nobody else can use on the channel. Please, please, please don't feel obligated to do this, but if you want to show your support, the link will be down below. Let's carry on with the story. Yeah, so I had to sit there for 14 hours, which looking back on it was quite ironic given that a truck driver's schedule is a typical 14-hour day on duty. So realizing that I had this big long time ahead of me before I got to get onto the next bus, I thought it'd be okay to go over and start talking to some people that were over there, create conversation because I'm going to be there a long time. And I found this sweet old black lady that was there who was also heading down to Kentucky. So she was stuck there for the entire time that I was as well. We got to talking and it was a good conversation. And to be honest, she helped my nerves quite a bit. I was really stressed out about what was to come. Having her company and talking to her, it definitely helped that quite a bit. But as the hours went by, I realized, okay, it's going to be a long night. So I figured I'd go out and have a smoke. So I went outside to the front of the terminal to have a cigarette and relax a little bit more before I was going to try to lay down on the terminal floor and take a nap. But while I was out there, a guy started to have a conversation with me, asking me about what I'm doing, where I'm heading and all that stuff. And I didn't think anything of it. He was being a nice guy. And so after talking with this guy for about 5 minutes, he thought that I might be a good potential customer for a particular business in which I could possibly partake in, which would lead to my imminent demise in the CDL industry when the impending drug test ensued. Yeah, that's right. He tried to offer me drugs outside of the terminal in Indiana. And this AI image looks like I'm a terrified little puppy getting picked on by the big old guys. Nevertheless, I politely declined his invitation to partake in substances that were not good for me at the time. So I finished my cigarette and went inside and started talking to the little old lady again. But she looked pretty close to that, to be honest. But nevertheless, I started talking to her. We chatted it up for a few more hours, and I learned about her life. She learned about mine. I figured at about that time, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, I would ball my belongings up and tuck them under my head and lay out on the floor. I don't know if you've ever been to a bus terminal before or an airport terminal, but they are not a big fan of sleep there. Their benches are designed in order to where you're not going to be able to sleep in them. The armrests are in a certain way to where you can't lay out on the benches there. So the only real option is the hard floor. So I laid out like this guy right here that may or may not have got his arm potentially blown off. And I tried to get some sleep. To no avail, because there was this awful buzzing light that was driving me nuts with the sound. I could not fall asleep. I think I got 30 minutes in that whole 14-hour period after being up all day the day prior packing all my stuff. He's definitely not sleeping either. So as my 14 hours was coming to a close, the Greyhound bus pulled up into the station and I got on, headed down to Kentucky, and I began my trucking journey from there. So this was the first rendition of Stories from States, starting with Indiana. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you like that and you like this idea, I'm going to keep on going with it. We'll probably pick back up right in Kentucky where this one left off and go from there. Also, let me know what you think about these awesome AI created images and animations. Would you prefer to see these funny animations, or would you like to stare at my ugly mug while I tell these stories from the different states? All right, y'all. I appreciate you taking the time to watch my video. All right. Bye.